when she was only 11, not even a woman, barely out of childhood, still playing with ivory figurines carved by the court artisans. Her tiny hands, soft and trembling, were forced into the grip of a man 3 times her age. His palm was rough, calloused by battles fought not for honor, but for ambition. The crowd roared approval not for her happiness, but for the consolidation of power. The crown that slipped onto her head weighed more than she did. It was supposed to symbolize glory. To her, it was iron shackles hammered into place, an invisible chain dragging her toward a future she could not escape. The priest's voice filled the cathedral. Incense choked the air, heavy and suffocating. She tried to breathe, but every word he spoke pressed down harder on her chest. In holy union, for the good of the realm, the people cheered. To them, this was history. To her, it was the end of innocence. Before we dive in, if you like these deep dives into the raw, unvarnished corners of history, tap like, subscribe, and tell me where you're listening from. It blows my mind that we can piece together these lives across centuries, from kitchen tables, buses, dorm rooms, connected by curiosity. At 11, she was married not to a man, but to an empire's destiny, while other girls still learned to sing nursery songs. She was learning how to bow, how to curtsy, how to hide the tremor in her hands when courtiers whispered about her womb. Too small, some said. Too fragile, murmured others. But the king wanted heirs, and the queen, though little more than a child, was expected to deliver. Her chambers were filled, not with dolls or laughter, but with midwives and doctors. They measured her hips, prodded her stomach, and argued in hushed voices whether her body could endure what lay ahead. She sat silent, staring at the golden embroidery of her bed curtains, wishing she could vanish into the threads. Every month that passed was not counted by seasons or festivals, but by whether she bled. By 12, her body was already carrying life. But it was not the miracle the people celebrated in songs. It was agony. Her back ached as though crushed by millstones. Her stomach swelled beyond what her frail frame could bear. She cried through the nights, clutching her chest, begging silently for mercy. The king, meanwhile, paraded his pride. Our dynasty secured, he shouted in the hall. Nobles toasted, musicians played, and the little queen lay in darkness, her lips cracked from thirst, her body racked with pain. When the child came, it was not with joy but with blood, so much blood that the chambermaids feared she would not survive. They pressed hot cloths against her, whispered prayers, and begged the saints for her life. She lived, but the part of her that believed in happiness died that night. The people rejoiced at an heir. She stared at the ceiling, hollow-eyed, wondering how many more times she would be forced to endure this torment. Palaces glittered with marble columns, chandeliers dripping with light, and banquet tables groaning with roasted meats. But to the young queen, these were not signs of luxury. They were bars of a cage. She was never alone. Ladies-in-waiting reported her every sigh, her every tear. Courtiers scrutinized her meals. Spies listened through the cracks of her doors. Her life was not hers, it was the property of the crown. Once, she dared to ask if she might ride a horse through the palace gardens. The king laughed. A queen does not ride. A queen produces sons. The words cut deeper than any blade. Even the sky she glimpsed through her window seemed to belong to someone else. Her family, who once kissed her forehead and braided her hair, were gone. Sent away, dismissed, or silenced. Letters she tried to write were intercepted. She had no allies, no comfort, no mother to whisper reassurances in the dark. The king grew impatient. One child was not enough. He demanded more. The court doctors gave her tonics to strengthen her womb, bitter brews that burned her throat and left her weak. She obeyed because defiance meant punishment, not just for her, but for the servants who loved her. Rumors spread. If she failed to give him sons, perhaps another would replace her. She lay awake at night, staring at the velvet canopy, her small hands clutching the sheets, terrified that every day might be her last as queen. She was a child living with the constant shadow of execution. The second pregnancy nearly killed her. Her ribs felt as though they would snap. Her legs swelled until she could no longer walk. The palace halls echoed with music, but inside her chamber, screams drowned it out. The midwife, her hands trembling, whispered, "She is too small. This cannot," but no one dared stop it. Hours of agony passed. By the time the infant cried, the queen lay motionless, her body pale, her lips blue. She lived barely. The king was dissatisfied. It was a daughter. He wanted sons to the world. She was a failure. To herself, she was disappearing piece by piece. When she was strong enough to stand, the court forced her to attend ceremonies. She staggered, clutching her skirts, her body still bleeding, while nobles judged her with cold eyes. "She is weak," they said. "She must do better." At one feast, the king raised his cup and declared, "Behold, the mother of my children." The hall erupted in applause. She sat at his side, numb, her cheeks burning with shame. She wanted to scream, but no sound escaped her throat. Her body was not hers. It was a battlefield, conquered again and again by duty. In the quiet of night, she dreamed of escape. She imagined herself running barefoot through fields of wildflowers, sunlight warming her face, laughter spilling from her lips. But every morning, she awoke to cold stone walls, to the iron lock on her chamber door, to the weight of expectation. The dream dissolved into dust. She was not a queen, she was a prisoner. And the cruelest part was this: the people called her blessed. The court rejoiced. When she conceived again, bells rang, choirs sang, nobles drank themselves into delirium. But in her chamber, the queen lay curled on her bed, shivering. Her body was breaking. Each step felt like knives in her spine. Her hands shook when she lifted a cup of water. She whispered to the midwife, "I cannot. I will die." The midwife lowered her eyes. None dared repeat those words in the king's presence. When the time came, the palace echoed with her screams. Walls that had witnessed coronations and victories now bore silent. Testimony to a child's agony turned into childbirth. The child lived. She survived, but something inside her cracked beyond repair. Her body was alive. Her soul was not. The palace was vast endless corridors lined with mirrors and portraits of kings. Yet she walked them alone. Guards stood at every corner, their armor gleaming, their eyes blank. Servants bowed but did not speak. She was surrounded, but she had never been more isolated. At night she heard laughter from distant halls, where the king entertained mistresses. She pressed her hands to her ears, trying to drown out the sound. But silence was worse. It forced her to face the truth. Her world was silence. Her heart a locked chamber no key could open. One day, during a royal banquet, the king, drunk with wine and arrogance, mocked her frailty before the entire court. "See how delicate she is," he sneered, "yet she cannot even give me strong sons." Laughter rippled through the hall. Nobles clinked glasses. Her face burned, tears pricking her eyes, but she forced herself not to cry. Crying would make it worse, she smiled, a broken mask, as the court devoured her dignity like vultures. The Queen was no longer a woman. She was a spectacle of failure. Her final pregnancy became a death sentence. She was 17, yet her body bore the scars of decades. Veins bulged in her legs, her skin stretched thin, her bones ached as if they would snap. The child came too. Early, the palace was hushed, waiting for the cry of life. None came. The infant was stillborn. The Queen wept not just for the child, but for herself, for the girl she once was, for the freedom she never knew, for the years stolen from her. Climax. 12. In that moment, she realized she was not a mother, not a queen, not even a woman. She was a vessel emptied and discarded. The court buzzed with whispers. She is cursed, some said. The gods punish her, others muttered. Every failure to bear another heir fed the fire. Priests suggested rituals. Physicians bled her. Alchemists poured strange elixirs down her throat. She endured it all in silence, because silence was the only shield left to her. Her body was no longer hers, it belonged to their superstition. In her despair, she turned to prayer. Kneeling before gilded icons, she whispered pleas into the void. Her knees bruised against the cold stone. Candles flickered. Smoke curled upward, but no answer came. She prayed for strength, for love, for release. What she received was silence, and yet she prayed, because it was the only place she was allowed to speak without interruption. In the chapel, her tears were invisible. In the chapel, at least, she could pretend someone listened. By 18, her face was hollow, her skin pale as parchment. The vibrancy of youth had drained away, replaced with exhaustion etched into every line. Other girls her age twirled in silk gowns at festivals, laughed in gardens, dreamed of love. She sat in shadows, her laughter long buried. Her childhood had been stolen, her youth was never hers. The king grew colder. His eyes no longer even regarded her as a wife. To him, she was simply a defective mechanism. He surrounded himself with concubines and favorites, flaunting them openly. The Queen endured the humiliation silently, because silence was safer than anger. Anger could cost her life. The cruelest prison is not built of stone, it is built of indifference. And yet, within the cracks of despair, she resisted in the only ways she could. She whispered kind words to her servants, offered coins to the poor. When no one watched, smuggled food from her own table to starving children beyond the palace gates. They were small acts, invisible acts, but they were hers. Even in chains, she carved out fragments of humanity. Her health worsened. Fevers racked her body. She coughed blood into silk handkerchiefs, hiding the stains before anyone could see. Doctors bled her again, drained what little strength she had left. Her reflection in the mirror frightened her. Sunken eyes, hollow cheeks, a face that looked decades older than her years. She was not dying suddenly. She was dying slowly, piece by piece. In plain sight, the winter winds howled through the palace, rattling the windows, extinguishing candles. The Queen lay in bed, her body thin as a whisper. She could no longer rise, no longer walk the endless corridors. The king did not visit. Courtiers prepared their mourning clothes, eager for the pageantry of another funeral. She closed her eyes and imagined herself once more as a child running barefoot in fields. The sun warm on her skin, free at last. Her final breath was not taken. It was given, released into the cold night air, carrying her spirit away from the palace that had devoured her. The chronicles barely mentioned her. A single line: the queen died young. No ballads, no statues, no memorials. She was erased from history, but not from truth. Her life was tragic, not because she was weak, but because she was never allowed to be anything else. And tonight, as you listen to her story, she is remembered not as a failure, not as a vessel, but as a girl who was stolen by power, yet still managed to leave whispers of humanity behind. If her story moved you, if you believe forgotten lives like hers deserve to be remembered, then please support this channel. Subscribe, share, and let her voice echo beyond the palace walls that once silenced her. Because history is not just kings and battles, it is the cries of the forgotten. And every story, like hers, deserves to be told.